We find ourselves in Purgatory, a desolate place where two boys, Anshik and his opponent, are locked in a fierce struggle over a gleaming dagger. Anshik's eyes reflect a deadly intent, as if he's on the brink of ending his adversary's life. He's desperate to survive, but his opponent seems impervious to reason. Anshik, his heart pounding, tries to defuse the situation, warning that killing one another could lead to a dark fate for both of them. But his words fall on deaf ears. Drowning in the intensity of the moment, Anshik uses a rock to bash in his opponent and leave him on the ground bloody. With quick thinking, Anshik manages to use the dagger not to kill, but to immobilize his opponent. He takes a cautious step back and then retrieves his backpack, beads of sweat glistening on his forehead. As he unscrews the cap of his water bottle and takes a sip, relief washes over him. His determination to survive burns bright within, fueled by the fear he felt upon first arriving in this eerie realm. Anshik's thoughts race back to the beginning, to the day that brought him to this place. Anshik, a 17-year-old student, woke up on that fateful day and wandered through eerily empty streets until a mysterious voice echoed in his ears. The voice arrived like a beam of light, reminiscent of a swirling wormhole, and it offered him a whirlwind recap of his life. It unveiled the painful truth. Anshik had taken his own life by leaping from the 27th floor of a building, driven to such a desperate act by relentless bullying and school violence. Curiosity tugs at Anshik's mind as he wonders how this enigmatic wormhole knows so much about him. In response, the ethereal entity claims knowledge of his past, present, and even his future. It bluntly states that his suicide was the end of his life, but then it presents him with a choice: survive to revive. This choice grants Anshik the opportunity to return to the moment before his suicide if his will proves strong enough. Anshik's initial reaction is disbelief. He considers it all a cruel joke. After all, how could the dead be brought back to life? And what worth did his life hold anyway? But then the wormhole starts a verification process, showing Anshik the consequences of the choices he will make. First, if he confirms his death, it foretells the tragic fate of his parents, who will soon succumb to the trauma of losing their son. Second, if he chooses to revive and continue living, he is promised a life of grandeur, becoming a renowned author and a multimillionaire by his mid-20s, bathed in the spotlight of glamour. Anshik swiftly seizes the offer to revive, but there's a catch. He learns about the Survive to Revive competition. To earn his chance at revival, he must endure a grueling trial in purgatory for 1,000 suns, equivalent to 1,000 days. With unwavering resolve, he accepts the challenge, and his participation is officially recorded. However, the competition proves to be more challenging than he could have imagined. He's handed a backpack containing only minimal supplies meant to last 1,000 days, and he's bound by strict rules. Rule 1: no direct killing of other humans in purgatory. Rule 2: no consuming human flesh. Rule 3: suicide is strictly forbidden. Any transgressions result in immediate banishment to hell. As Anshik watches the wormhole disappear without guidance on where to find shelter or sustenance, he realizes he's nearly stranded in this desolate place. Purgatory offers no signs of life, no rainfall, and no other organisms. His only hope lies in the limited supplies within his backpack, a precious resource in this barren wasteland. Just as Anshik stands there, stunned by the sudden betrayal, he's approached by another man carrying a backpack identical to his own. This man is clearly a part of the Survive to Revive competition, and his name is Gilho. In his previous life, Gilho was a successful business owner who spiraled into depression after enduring a series of devastating losses in his business ventures. Now he competes in this harrowing trial because he believes that in 10 years, his child will achieve great success, and he desperately wants to be there to witness it. Gilho learns the tragic cause of Anshik's death and can't help but mock him for not being able to confront his tormentors. Yet, he too had been on a sinking ship of despair, ending his own life due to his financial struggles in the business world. Surprisingly, despite their initial friction, a bond forms between them, forged by the shared burden of their pasts and their current predicament. As they sit together, they even pluck up the courage to reveal the contents of each other's backpacks, both secretly wishing for more supplies to aid their chances of survival. Before we continue, take a moment to answer the question of the day. What are some underrated manhwas that more people should know about? Comment down below for a chance to be shouted out. Now back to the recap, but just as camaraderie seems to settle between them, Gilho betrays Anshik with a sudden ambush. He wields a dagger knife and wears a devious smile, revealing his twisted belief that the competition is about stealing backpacks from other competitors, rationalizing it as a survival strategy. Gilho's sinister plan unfolds as he intends to maim Anshik's legs, leaving him helpless to starve or bleed to death. In his twisted logic, this plan doesn't break the rules since it results in an indirect death. Anshik has no other option but to relinquish his backpack to the conniving Gilho. As the realization of losing his only lifeline sets in, Anshik breaks down in tears, overwhelmed by the despair of his situation. He contemplates his next move without any supplies, a stark reminder of how swiftly he lost everything he was given just an hour ago. Now, Anshik walks alone through the dimly lit streets of Purgatory, his footsteps echoing in the desolation. But then, a glimmer of hope appears as he spots a faint light emanating from one of the abandoned houses. He calls out to the source of the light, desperately expressing his lack of supplies or weapons to assure that he poses no threat. The light reveals itself to be from a soldier named Byong Guan. Ironically, Byong Guan also reveals that he had lost his backpack in a similar ambush, and the only supply left in his possession is a flashlight he had hidden in his pocket. In this bleak and treacherous realm, the three survivors, Anshik, Gilho, and Byong Guan, now face the daunting challenge of forging alliances and navigating the brutal trials of Purgatory together. Anshik musters the courage to ask Byong if he could spend the night with him, and thankfully, Byong agrees. It's clear that sticking together is their best chance for survival in this unforgiving place. However, Byong doesn't come across as the sociable or friendly type of soldier. His expression carries a mix of frustration and weakness, and all he seems to want is a good night's sleep, followed by another day of ambushing competitors for supplies. Anshik can't help but express his disdain for the idea of reviving someone who resorts to stealing and robbing to make it back to life. He questions the morality of such an approach. In response, Byong snarls, defending the rules of Purgatory and asserting that this is how life often works. The weak either get used or perish. The conversation is interrupted by the arrival of a girl named Seorin, who had overheard their discussion and didn't judge them as bad people. She's also in search of companionship after having her supply backpack stolen. This news rattles Byong, as being surrounded by high school kids means his chances of survival have taken a hit. Seorin, however, brings a glimmer of hope by sharing that she spotted a stray backpack filled with supplies. There's a catch, though. No one can access it. Anshik touches the mysterious backpack and is immediately transported into some kind of memory. It turns out that the backpack belonged to a deceased soul named Uyon, who had committed suicide and had no intention of participating in the Revive to Survive competition. Uyon requests to be taken to Hell, but to do so, he must complete a resentment task, which would grant access to his backpack once the task is accomplished. Uyon's task is to confront and beat up the bully who caused his death, a certain Chang Yu. Seorin needed help with this task, as she couldn't accomplish it alone. The number of people who could take on the resentment task was unlimited, but Anshik, Byong, and Seorin realized that recruiting more people would mean limited supplies to go around. Despite their fear, Byong stirs up some fighting spirit in the high schoolers as they prepare to venture into the living realm to complete Uyon's task and gain access to his supplies. However, their hopes are quickly dashed upon arriving in the living realm. Byong reaches for a stick to confront the supposed aggressor, Changyu, but his hand passes right through it, leaving them in a perplexing and perilous situation. As the trio finds themselves trapped in the living realm, the Purgatory wormhole suddenly reappears, shedding light on the rules of their predicament. Firstly, they can only touch their intended target, but no other objects. Secondly, no one can leave a resentment task incomplete. And thirdly, they cannot partake of food or water while in this realm. With these revelations, the gravity of their situation becomes painfully clear. Nevertheless, Byong summons his courage and charges at the bully who towers over him by a factor of 2. Unfortunately, his bravery results in a brutal beating, rendering him battered and bruised. His companions, despite the earlier pep talk, are too paralyzed by fear to intervene. Anshik, in particular, grapples with post-traumatic stress disorder, as he had faced a similar situation before his death. Changyu, the bully, continues to assert his dominance, even turning his aggression towards Seorin without question. Fueled by desperation, he doesn't spare a thought about their origins and instead dishes out a vicious beating. Suddenly, a loud thud echoes in the air, emanating from Anshik, who wields Changyu's mop. The impossible has happened. Anshik has touched an object despite being in the mortal realm. He deduces that the rules were only applicable before the resentment task began, And now that Changyu no longer truly belongs to the living realm, they can touch what he touches. Despite the setback, Changyu doesn't relent and lunges at Anshik. But in a remarkable turn of events, Baiyong rises to his feet and delivers a powerful kick to the back of Changyu's head, targeting the same spot that had hurt him so deeply in the military. Changyu writhes in pain, rolling on the floor. The question arises: how did Baiyong know that this attack would be so effective? He reveals that these are the same boots that were used to assault him during his military service. With Changyu's hands now broken, thanks to Surin's intervention, the trio finally gains the upper hand in the fight. However, it's not enough to complete the resentment task. Uyon's instructions demand that Changyu be beaten to the brink of death, a daunting task given his formidable size. Baiyong suggests using the stick to inflict more damage, but Anshik, unwilling to resort to violence, objects. Surin, driven by hunger and an unyielding will to survive, takes it upon herself to carry out the gruesome act. As she prepares to deliver the final blows, the wormhole suddenly reappears, delivering the astonishing news that the task is a success. Their collective effort has satisfied Uyon's resentment, and they have earned the right to access his supplies. With Changyu teetering on the brink of death, the trio has successfully completed Uyon's resentment task, earning them access to his backpack of supplies. They are promptly teleported back into the purgatory, where the relief of finally having food and water after a day of starvation washes over them. As they eat, they ponder a new strategy for obtaining food and supply backpacks. Anshik suggests the possibility of surviving solely on sealed backpacks obtained from resentment resolutions. However, Surin raises concerns about the uncertainty of the remaining 1,000 days. She was fortunate to stumble upon the backpack she needed after a full day of searching, and they have no knowledge of when or where these backpacks might appear, or if it's entirely random. Baiyong adds another layer of complexity to the issue, pointing out that each resentment requirement will likely be different each time. They contemplate what might happen if someone's wish involves world domination. The most crucial question, however, is whether these three can trust each other for the duration of this ordeal. Trust issues ripple through the room until Anshik suggests a brilliant solution: getting to know each other. They start with introductions. Anshik shares the story of his death and his glimpse into the future, explaining his motivation for competing in Survive to Revive. Baiyong follows, revealing his own tragic demise due to military abuse and his future as the CEO of a successful mobile app startup. Surin's future holds fame as an influencer with over 1 million followers, but her cause of death stems from a deeply distressing event: sexual abuse at the hands of her own father. While Baiyong passionately speaks about seeking revenge for Surin upon his revival, Anshik cautions them to be quiet as they notice a confrontation unfolding outside. Two men are engaged in a heated battle, with one of them being Gilho, the man who robbed Anshik, and the other being Bagon, who had robbed Baiyong. It's evident that a fight between thieves is underway, and both of them are revealed to be businessmen. Bagun claims that his death was an accident, and that he doesn't belong in this place, emphasizing his desperate desire to return home by any means necessary. To spare the details, the two men engage in a brutal and gruesome fight, exchanging punches and knife stabs in a fierce battle for survival in the unforgiving purgatory. After the two thieves, Gilho and Bagun, have sufficiently weakened each other, Baiyong seizes the opportunity to approach the scene, ready to steal back their stolen backpacks. Despite the gruesome actions of these thieves in purgatory, Anshik still feels a twinge of compassion toward them and wants to save them. Fortunately, Baiyong reminds him that they brought this fate upon themselves and are merely retrieving their stolen belongings fairly. As several days pass, the trio continues to journey through the desolate purgatory, their hunger returning. Anshik offers words of encouragement, reminding them that they still have 955 days to endure, having already spent 5 days in this realm. However, trouble soon arrives in the form of Wang Cheol, the mobster who had previously ambushed Surin's backpack. After careful consideration, they decide to take the bold approach and infiltrate Wang Cheol's hideout instead of lying low, with the intention of stealing his reserved backpacks. Anshik takes the lead in scouting the hideout, as Baiyong is too hesitant to approach the intimidating mobster's turf. Inside, they discover that Wang Cheol has amassed numerous stolen backpacks and keeps some prisoners whom he treats like obedient pets. The prisoners endure such brutal treatment that one of them pleads for death as an escape from the suffering. However, Wang Cheol has other plans for them. It turns out he has meticulously trained these humans to become his loyal puppies and guards for his hideout, leaving no room for intruders. The gang discusses the seemingly impossible mission, with Baeyong immediately labeling it as such. He also raises concerns about the possibility of Wang Chil having an accomplice outside the hideout. Anshik, however, believes there might be a way. He recalls something he noticed during his earlier scouting of the hideout. Ikjong, a 40-year-old man among the prisoners, couldn't bear the injustice of being Wang Chil's puppy. He urges the prisoners to unite so they can overthrow Wang Chil, but one of them is loyal to Wang Chil and refuses to cooperate, revealing his allegiance to the mobster's criminal enterprise. Inside the hideout, tension mounts as the prisoners' conflict unfolds. Meanwhile, outside the hideout, Wang Chil returns from his walk earlier than expected, and there's still no sign of Anshik. Sioran hatches a daring plan to use herself as bait to lure Wang Chil away from his hideout, while Baeyong attempts to rescue Anshik from the dangerous predicament inside. Sioran kneels before Wang Chil, a flicker of recognition crossing his eyes as he realizes that he had previously robbed her. However, his curiosity is piqued by how she managed to survive in the purgatory without any supplies. Sioran quickly weaves a fabricated story, claiming that she completed resentment resolution tasks to secure her supplies. Wang Chil, however, knows firsthand how challenging resentment tasks can be, and doubts that Sioran could have completed them on her own. He begins to suspect that she was used as a decoy. Just then, a special whistle that Wang Xiol had taught the prisoners to use in case of intruder sounds, prompting him to dash back to his hideout. Inside, he discovers two young boys who pose a threat to burn the backpacks of supplies, while the prisoners are cold and passed out. Despite Wang Qiu's aggressive demeanor, he is aware that he cannot kill anyone, as that would condemn him to hell. The boys initially seem willing to negotiate, and Wang Qiu appears open to the idea of sharing supplies. However, he eventually betrays their trust, reneging on their agreement and launching an ambush on Baeyong and Anshik. Just as the situation takes a dire turn, Ikjong intervenes, swiftly looping a rope around Wang Cheol's neck. It becomes apparent that the boys did not flee when the prisoners sounded the whistle. Instead, Anshik had untied Ikjong, granting him his freedom. Together, they managed to subdue Wang Cheol with the assistance of the other prisoners. As the group begins to celebrate their small victory, they suddenly hear approaching footsteps. To their alarm, the figure that emerges is Sioran, but she's not alone. Their predicament escalates as Yongpal, Wang Qiu's henchman, arrives on the scene. Yongpal is appalled by the sight before him and resolves to teach them all a harsh lesson. The sudden change in circumstances plunges the group into a state of palpable fear. While Ikjong tries to rally their fighting spirit, one of the released prisoners is swiftly stabbed in the shoulder by an unseen assailant, further intensifying the danger they face. Yongpal's skill in throwing knives becomes evident as he swiftly incapacitates one of the prisoners, immediately gaining the submission of Wang Qiu's loyal puppy. Ikjong isn't surprised by Yongpal's cunning. He had long recognized the man's treacherous nature. After all, traitorous intent had always been reflected in his eyes. Anshik, displaying a genius plan to evade Yongpal's knives, suggests the group run as a moving target would be challenging for Yongpal to hit. Moreover, they are all aware that even an accidental killing could condemn Yongpal to hell. However, there's a twist. The only exit from the room is behind Yongpal. Desperate to survive, Anshik and the group resort to drastic measures. They set the backpacks on fire as a distraction, while Seorin strikes Yongpal in the back of the head with a rock, creating an opening for their escape. The gang manages to flee, leaving one of the prisoners behind, who returns for supplies and is subsequently stabbed by Yongpal. As they make their escape, Ikjong collapses from his severe injuries, inflicted by Wang Qiu's cruelty. Baeyong urges them to keep moving, but Anshik's compassionate nature prevails. Ikjong begins to share his story and the reasons behind his presence in purgatory. He was a chronic gambler who had lost everything, including his marriage, job, and dignity. His gambling addiction had left him drowning in debt and unable to care for his 6-year-old daughter, so he entrusted her to the care of his mother. Ikjong declares that reviving wouldn't make him a better person or father, as he believes he would only squander any future winnings. He provides them with a contact number for his mother, who has custody of his daughter, and is willing to give up his life on the condition that they find and take care of his family if they survive. Now back in pursuit of the prisoners, Wang Qiuol relies on his puppy, Hyokbo, to guide him along the path. However, they encounter an obstacle in the form of Ikjong, who stands in their way, expressing his deep hatred for thugs like Wang Qiuol. He reveals that they were the main reason he took his own life previously, and this time, he is determined to fight them even if it means dying in the process. Wang Qiu and Hyokbo share a laugh over the situation, marking a significant departure from Wang Qiu's usual practice of simply calling his loyal companion Puppy. Wang Qiu justifies his decision to address Hyokbo by his name one last time as the right thing to do before a man meets his end. Initially taken aback, Hyokbo's confusion dissipates quickly as Wang Qiu uses him as a human shield against Ikkyong's attack. Hyokbo hits the ground, and as he does, memories from his life flash before his eyes. It's a harsh lesson about trusting criminals, and Wang Qiu treats it all as a game, eager to witness the consequences of a soul being condemned to hell in purgatory. Suddenly, a flame-like visage appears, seemingly that of a demon from hell. It pronounces Hyokbo dead and reduces his body to dust. Ikkyong, on the other hand, faces condemnation for breaking the rules and killing another soul in purgatory. His body is subjected to a painful death by flames, reducing him to ashes. Following these grim events, Yongpal reunites with Wang Qiu to discuss their next steps now that all the backpacks have been destroyed. Yongpal, who has had enough of dealing with the kids, wishes to have nothing more to do with them. However, Wang Qiu sees things differently. He believes the children have a better chance of surviving in purgatory than most adults, and has developed an interest in Anshik, wishing to mentor him. Hours later, the group continues to trek through the desolate purgatory without food or water, their frustration evident on their faces. They decide to take a break, though not without another outburst from Baiyong, who is upset with Sioran for worrying about Ikkyong. Baiyong's overriding concern is their survival above all else. Anshik tries to reason with the soldier, but their conversation is interrupted when a larger wormhole appears, making an announcement to all participants. The wormhole declares that the first rule has been broken and activates all participants' survival skills. The specifics of these skills remain shrouded in mystery for everyone. After delivering this brief message, the wormhole vanishes. At that moment, Anshik's ears pick up the sound of someone crying, a sound that Seorin and Baiyong are unable to detect. The trail they've been following leads them to a sealed backpack, confirming that Anshik's instincts were correct. To unlock the backpack and access its supplies, they must fulfill a resentment task related to a 14-year-old girl named Na-yoon and her resentment toward Jia, who bullied her. Na-yoon's wish is for Jia to lose all her friends and become so miserable that she contemplates suicide. Although this task is tricky, the famished trio has no other choice but to accept it. Upon their arrival in the living realm, they encounter an unexpected twist in Na-yoon's resentment. It turns out that Jia is actually a sweet girl who cares deeply for Na-yoon and is genuinely worried about her well-being. The situation doesn't make sense because Na-yoon wouldn't kill herself over a mere joke. Seorin speculates that Jia might be pretending, much like one of the bullies from their school, who would act nice in public but be cruel in private. Despite their overwhelming hunger, the trio cannot interact with anything or be seen by anyone except their target, Jia. Fortunately, they observe that Jia is planning to go out for food with her friends, providing an opportunity for Baiyong, as they can only access items their target touches. Driven by hunger, Baiyong approaches Jia, hoping she might offer him food. However, Jia reacts with alarm, misunderstanding his intentions and labeling him a pervert. She continues her outburst, leaving her friends baffled and wondering whom she is addressing. Due to Jia's unique status, she is the only one who can see Baiyong. To take advantage of the situation, Anshik devises a clever plan to extract a confession from Jia. He intends to present Seorin as a haunting specter to Jia. The plan unfolds seamlessly, with Seorin's emaciated appearance terrifying Jia to such an extent that even her mother suspects her sanity is compromised. Later, Seorin traps Jia in her room and urges her to confess her bullying by texting the group chat with her friends. Jia proceeds to recount her version of the events, revealing her side of the story. Na-yoon had been a quiet girl with no friends until Jia approached her and helped her become more expressive. However, trouble arose when Na-yoon gained attention at school, attracting even the popular girl Min Young as a potential friend. Jia became jealous of Na-yoon's budding friendships, particularly with more popular people than herself. In her envy, Jia spread rumors that Na-yoon was a snitch who betrayed Min Young. This jealousy was the root of their conflict. As Jia pleads for her life, realizing the text she's about to send could ruin her reputation, she breaks down in tears and begs for mercy. She hesitates to send the confession text. Seorin, desperate to complete the task, resorts to threatening Jia's mother due to her lack of cooperation. In a sudden turn of events, Jia tackles Seorin by the leg, causing her to lose balance and hit her head. This surprising physical interaction between a ghost and a living person shocks everyone. Outside, Anshik and Baeyong are concerned about Seorin's well-being after being alone with Jia, who seemed difficult to crack. Anshik maintains faith in Seorin's ability to complete the task. Little do they know that the ghost they sent after Jia is currently bleeding. Jia's evil smile reveals her true nature, a mini-demon in disguise. In their minor scuffle, Jia gains the upper hand momentarily. She stomps on Seorin's injured foot and pushes her down on the bed, warning her not to mess with the wrong person. She boasts about Seorin's empty threats and her preference to keep her mother in the dark rather than reveal the truth about Na Yoon's death to her friends. Jia explains that Na Yoon had pleaded with her to clear her name from the Minyoung drama and had asked for forgiveness if she had done anything wrong. Jia's response had been cold and unforgiving, blaming Na Yoon for trying to elevate her social status. She had warned Na Yoon not to visit her again and to leave her alone at night. The present-day Jia shows no remorse for Na Yoon's death, indicating that her previous act in front of her friends was just a facade. Seorin takes the opportunity to let Jia reveal her ruthless acts before dropping the bombshell that she's finally going to get food after solving Ni Yoon's resentment task. To ensure her confession is recorded, Seorin secretly records a voice message in the group chat, capturing everything Jia says about her mom and her involvement in Na Yoon's tragedy. Jia tries to stop Seorin from sending the message, but Seorin proves to be stronger, delivering a hard slap across Jia's face that sends her falling. After successfully exposing the deceitful and treacherous deeds of Jia to her unsuspecting schoolmates, which notably included Min Yeong and even her own mother, a dramatic turn of events unfolds. The wormhole, an enigmatic and otherworldly entity, abruptly appears. It solemnly announces that Na Yoon's deep-seated resentment has been thoroughly completed. Consequently, as a direct result of this completion, the previously unyielding seal on their backpack is miraculously unlocked. In the midst of these revelations, they finally obtain much-needed sustenance, while Seorin, with a grimace of pain, carefully tends to her painfully wounded foot. In a moment of reflection, Anshik, feeling a mix of guilt and responsibility, offers a heartfelt apology for the unfortunate series of events that directly led to Seorin's injury. Despite his remorse, Seorin, rather than focusing on her own plight, expresses a growing concern about the potential and far-reaching consequences of their collective actions in this strange purgatory-like realm. Her mind is troubled by the unnerving possibility of being asked to commit an act of violence, such as killing someone, as part of a resentment task in the future. Baeyong, who is always practical and acutely focused on the immediate need for their survival, quickly reminds them of a harsh reality. He points out that each backpack they come across represents a life, a stark reminder that they need to continue their relentless hunting for more sealed backpacks. Due to her incapacitated state, Seorin, hindered by her injured foot, is assigned the task of waiting for the others while they embark on their search for more sealed backpacks. As they venture further in their quest for backpacks, Baeyong, ever curious, expresses a keen interest in Anshik's survival skill. He quietly hopes it will be something related to combat, which could prove beneficial in their dire situation. Suddenly, their conversation is interrupted by a loud, piercing cry echoing in the distance. To their horror, they witness a chilling scene. A man being viciously attacked by a starving woman. This harrowing incident marks the first time they have witnessed someone who is condemned to the depths of hell, and the terrifying sight leaves them utterly shaken. The man, overwhelmed by fear and desperation, is so frightened that even the stringent rules of this purgatorial realm prevent him from inflicting harm upon himself. This prompts Anshik to ponder the punishment for someone who would dare to break two rules simultaneously by committing the act of suicide. Amidst this chaos, a mysterious girl approaches them. She introduces herself and proceeds to explain her theory about the circumstances under which someone can be condemned to hell. However, she admits that her theory lacks concrete proof, as she has not personally witnessed such an event. She scrutinizes Baeyong and concludes that he is no different from her abandoned party, following which she decides to move on. Anshik, his senses heightened, suddenly detects the presence of a sealed backpack ahead, causing the strange girl, now identified as Sang-hui, to pause and contemplate the nature of Anshik's survival skill. Sang-hui, in a moment of vulnerability, shares her poignant backstory with them. She reveals that she tragically died at the young age of 21, her life cut short due to the unbearable weight of academic stress and depression. Her resentment task in this realm is a deeply personal one: to prevent her younger brother, Haon, from succumbing to the same fate of academic trauma that she endured. Intriguingly, this particular task is designed for 3 people, a unique and unprecedented requirement that they haven't encountered before in their journey. Moreover, the target of resentment may involve not just 1, but 2 people. Sang-hwee's brother Haon is at risk of becoming a victim of academic depression, much like she did, at the hands of their father, Mr. Oh, despite caring deeply for Sang-hwee, is driven by his own ambitions and had once forced her into the rigorous and demanding world of medical school. Now, with Sang-hwee gone, there is a looming fear that Haon might become the next target of their father's unrelenting academic pressures. Before we continue, let's take a moment to shout out Ara Simp, who commented, "This channel is so underrated, bro. You always cover good manhwa on our unordinary video. Thanks for commenting." That particular evening, Mr. O found himself engulfed in a state of anxious anticipation, eagerly awaiting his son Haon's return from school. He was particularly keen to lay his eyes on the results of Haon's recent mock examination. The dynamics of their relationship were far from ideal, often shrouded in a palpable tension and an overarching sense of fear, rather than being filled with the comforting warmth and joy typically associated with paternal bonds. Haon, on his part, harbored a deep-seated dread of his father's overbearing desperation. This fear propelled him to quickly seek refuge in the secluded sanctuary of his room upon arriving home. In a twist unbeknownst to Mr. O, Haon's room was already covertly occupied by Onshik and Bayong, who had surreptitiously hidden themselves away, biding their time for the opportune moment to unveil their presence. The eventual revelation of their hiding initially incites a considerable commotion from Haon. However, Onshik adeptly manages to calm him down, ultimately convincing him of their ethereal, non-earthly origin. Seizing this peculiar moment of eerie calm, Haon opens up to Onshik. He pours out his heart, sharing the tale of how he had found himself reluctantly succumbing to his father's fervent desires for him to pursue a career in medicine. He recounts how, from his early childhood, his father was perennially overshadowed by his brother and nephews, all of whom were esteemed medical doctors, particularly at family gatherings. His father, once a dedicated baseball player and now a divorcee, had spent the subsequent years of his life in a relentless pursuit of wealth. Haon's narrative then shifts to Sang-hwee, his sister, who had once been the beacon of hope for their father. The father had harbored grand ambitions for her to carve out a successful career in medicine. However, when Sang-hwee faltered and failed to secure a place in medical school, their father resorted to taking out a hefty loan to finance exorbitantly priced tutorial sessions for her. The plot thickens as Haon reveals the current state of affairs. With both Sang-hwee and their mother no longer a part of their lives, Haon finds himself grappling with the fear of also losing his father. This fear led him to agree to tread in Sang-hwee's footsteps, in spite of his apparent lack of aptitude for medical studies. He also admits to having failed the recent mock exam, a fact he had chosen to conceal from his father. Upon being privy to the intricate details of the resentment task, Bayong is immediately struck with a sense of regret for their involvement. However, Onshik, ever the strategist, proposes a plan to delve into Sang-hwee's room in search of any evidence that might shed light on her academic struggles, potentially swaying their father's rigid mindset. The story takes a sudden, dramatic turn when Mr. O bursts into the room, armed with a baseball bat and fueled by a protective rage, convinced that someone is attempting to blackmail his son. In a brave act of filial protection, Haon positions himself between his father and the perceived threat, attempting to reason with the incensed Mr. O. However, Mr. O, obstinate and unwavering in his beliefs, maintains that with sufficient effort and time, Haon can triumph over any obstacle, regardless of the years it may take. What will happen next? Find out next time by staying tuned for our future recaps. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more great recaps. He violently pushes Haon aside with the bat, leaving him injured and bleeding, showing no concern for his well-being. Just as the situation escalates, the police arrive at the scene, prepared to arrest the trespassers. Unfortunately for him, it backfires because the police can only see one person in the room, and that's a bleeding Haon. As Mr. O sat in the dimly lit room, his heart raced with fear and confusion. The harsh, cold light of the police station barely reached the corners of the cramped space, casting eerie shadows on the peeling wallpaper. He watched helplessly as the officers surrounded him, their stern faces etched with suspicion. The officer in charge, Detective Park, peered at Mr. O with a furrowed brow, his eyes filled with concern. He couldn't comprehend the bizarre scene before him. Haon, the young boy bleeding on the floor, looked up at Mr. O with tears in his eyes, his pain evident in every whimper. Detective Park turned to his colleague, Officer Kim, and whispered, "Do you think Mr. O is in his right senses?" Officer Kim shook his head, equally baffled by the situation. They exchanged a few more whispered words before Detective Park addressed Mr. O. "Sir, we need to understand what happened here," he said, his voice tinged with empathy. Mr. O's mind raced as he struggled to explain the inexplicable. Anshik, standing beside him, reached out a reassuring hand, trying to calm the trembling man. Song Hui's resentment still hung heavy in the air, a lingering presence that only they could perceive. 2 hours later, after Mr. O had been apprehended, the boys searched the room for evidence to prove their claim, but were unable to find any. The room felt suffocating, the air thick with tension. Just then, Bai Ong, who had remained quiet until now, revealed himself as a tech genius. He furrowed his brows in concentration, hacking into the deleted files on Sang Hui's laptop. The next morning, Mr. O was released from police custody, his heart heavy with worry. He entered the room, his steps hesitant, and saw Sang Hui's laptop opened on the table. His eyes widened as he read the words on the screen, an acceptance letter into medical school. His heart leaped for joy, but it was short-lived. Anshik appeared beside him, his voice trembling with sorrow as he revealed the harsh truth. "Mr. O, that letter was a fake, created by Sang Hui the day she died." The room felt colder than ever, the weight of deceit hanging in the air. Despite the risk, Anshik made a desperate attempt to make Mr. O understand the pain Sang Hui had endured before her tragic end. He spoke with a heavy heart, but Mr. O remained obstinate and unyielding, unable to accept that he might have been the cause of Sang Hui's death. In his frustration and denial, Mr. O lashed out, grabbing a baseball bat and beating Anshik and Bayong mercilessly. The room echoed with the sound of violence, and pain filled the air. It seemed as if there was no way to break through to him. Amidst the chaos, Haon arrived, his face pale and pleading. He tried to convince Mr. O that his expectations of Sang Hui attending medical school were too high, that she had suffered in silence for far too long. Before we continue, take a moment to answer the question of the day. If you could create a crossover between two manhwas, which would they be and why? Comment down below for a chance to be shouted out. Now back to the recap. As Mr. O's anger began to subside, he recalled a memory from 10 years ago. It all started with a simple visit to his brother, seeking help for his dislocated shoulders that had forced him to quit baseball. But his brother, rather than offering support, took the opportunity to belittle him, dredging up painful personal matters and the circumstances of his divorce. Mr. O stormed out of his brother's office that day, his heart burning with anger and humiliation. He vowed to make his family regret treating him so poorly. The room seemed to close in on him, suffused with the weight of his unresolved past and the pain of his present predicament. When Mr. O arrived home that night, a youthful Sang Hui eagerly waved her test paper in front of him, her eyes shining with pride. She had achieved a perfect score, a feat that left her father in shock. Despite his initial disbelief, he mustered a smile and made a promise to support her dream, to study hard and become a doctor, just like her uncle, so she could brag as much as he did. 6 years passed, and Mr. O remained true to his word. He continuously supported Sang Hui's dream, even when her grades started to dip and her enthusiasm for studying waned. From his perspective, it all felt like a never-ending joke. Sang Hui had always been eager to work hard, hadn't she? However, in the present, everything changed. Haon, with a heavy heart, revealed Sang Hui's final wish, that their father no longer suffer from the same relentless pursuit of success that had burdened her. To fulfill her desire, Mr. O needed to release his rigid mindset, his sky-high expectations, and the heavy weight in his heart. For years, the siblings had watched their father strive relentlessly, working tirelessly to provide them with a comfortable life after being abandoned by their mother, who had followed another man. It became clear that Sang Hui's depression had stemmed from her inability to meet her father's unattainable expectations, despite all his sacrifices. Now, Haon wanted his father to live for his own happiness and not derive satisfaction from his children's achievements. In a moment of clarity, Mr. O finally saw reason. He admitted that failing a few questions didn't mean a person's life was ruined, and he tore out the pages of Sang Hui's math book. It was a powerful symbol of his willingness to change, to let go of the past and embrace a new way of thinking. In that very moment, a strange phenomenon occurred. A shimmering wormhole appeared, signaling that their task was complete. They had resolved a deep-seated resentment, and as a reward, they were granted the reduction of a son in purgatory. Confused and bewildered, the boys wondered what this meant. Their bodies ached from the beating they had endured from their father. However, their attention was soon diverted as the girl who had irritated Bayong earlier made her entrance. She introduced herself as Ho Jong, a 21-year-old with an intriguing proposition for Anshik. She suggested they become partners in some kind of venture. To seal the deal, Ho-jung grabbed an emergency kit from her bag, and after a few beams of light emanated from it, she used it to miraculously heal An-shik's broken bones. Turned out her survival instinct was the power of instant healing with emergency kits. The group was buzzing with excitement, as they were now part of something that had only existed in movies. Even Baiyong, who had been initially hostile towards Ho-jung, was willing to put aside their first encounter and become friends. Their curiosity about Ho-jung's abilities was insatiable. However, Ho-jung had a condition before allowing more members into the team. They must possess a strong survival instinct. She argued that Baiyong lacked this crucial trait, deeming him a potential dead weight, and declined to heal him. Unfazed, Baiyong took it as a challenge, boasting that he would develop a survival instinct far superior to hers. An-shik, thoughtful as ever, decided against joining Ho-jung and placed his trust firmly in his current team. He presented her with two options. Either she joined them, or she broke his bones and ventured on her own. Ho-jung found the sentiment amusing and questioned aloud whether the entire group would willingly follow one of their own to hell if that person were condemned. However, in the next slide, a surprising turn of events unfolded. Ho-jung healed Seorin's injured leg, officially joining the team. She outlined the clear basis of their partnership: no emotional attachment, no tolerance for slackers due to the lack of survival instinct, no unnecessary exchange of information, and a singular focus on the task at hand. As a new member, Ho-jung provided them with valuable tips on how to survive in this strange world. First, she explained the two different types of resentment backpacks. The first contained tasks designed to ruin a person's life and could involve an unlimited number of participants, much like Nayun's resentment. The second backpack was for tasks leading to happy endings, involving a limited number of participants and resulting in a reduced number of suns in purgatory, just like Sang-hui's resentment. Ho-jung also shared a tip on how to check their remaining days in purgatory by staring at their shadows while standing in front of the sun. The revelation left the trio stunned when they discovered they had 987 days left, while Seorin had 988 days remaining. Ho-jung warned them not to casually reveal this information to others. Furthermore, Ho-jung emphasized that they couldn't rely on their survival instincts during resentment tasks. This added layer of complexity to their challenges. Later, they embarked on a backpack hunting expedition, thanks to An-shik's skills. However, the task waiting in Gonggi's resentment proved to be a daunting one. It required them to break the legs of his teammates in a soccer match who had looked down on him. It was becoming clear to the gang why Ho-jung insisted on strong teammates when they found themselves at a significant disadvantage. Just as the tension in the group reached its peak, Wang Cheol and Yongpal made their unexpected arrival. Shockingly, Wang Cheol wasn't harboring any anger towards them, and he had no intentions of hurting them. However, Yongpal was determined to complete the resentment task, while Wang Cheol engaged the kids in a non-violent conversation, as he put it. The kids' response to Wang Cheol's approach was swift and furious. They refused to engage in conversation with someone who treated humans as if they were dogs. In Wang Cheol's defense, he argued that it was a means of survival, a sentiment that Ho-jung seemed to concur with. After all, they wouldn't be pushed to the brink of death if they weren't driven by selfishness. They were simply making choices to survive in purgatory. Wang Cheol was already warming up to their new teammate, Ho-jung, and it was revealed that she was the top student in her university. However, nobody knew why she had taken her own life. Wang Cheol proposed a deal that involved completing resentment tasks. One type of task required physical violence and bone breaking, while the other required emotional attachment. Since each of their teams lacked one of these elements, bringing the two groups together could benefit them all. Ho-jung quickly agreed to the proposal, but before An-shik could respond, Wang Cheol made it clear that he wasn't asking, he was commanding. He also demonstrated a sinister power by placing his hand on Ho-jung's head, causing her to relive a terrifying moment from her past. This display of power left Ho-jung shaken, and Wang Cheol revealed that this was his survival instinct, a way to make people submit to him without resorting to physical violence. Next in Wang Cheol's sights was Baiyong, the strong-willed soldier who resisted him. However, Wang Cheol was nothing if not determined. He forced his hand onto Baiyong's head, subjecting him to a virtual replay of the terrifying events that had led to his death. In this virtual world, a painful scene unfolded, depicting Baiyong during his military service. One night, Corporal Park arrived with a menacing aura and threats against him. It turned out that Baiyong had been targeted because of a letter of complaint he had written about the excessive workload and bullying by supervisors. Park secretly hurt Baiyong, inflicting more pain on his already bruised body. While Baiyong endured excruciating pain in the virtual reality, his purgatory self also experienced the agony. Unfortunately, his friends were powerless to stop Wang Cheol, whose non-violent conversation had taken a dark and violent turn. Meanwhile, in the virtual world, Park forced Byong's head into a basin of water, compelling him to drink it all. Instead of resisting, Byong surprisingly accepted it calmly, even causing Park to fear that he might have gone too far and killed him. During the moments of calmness, Byong was grappling with questions about his own existence. But when he stood up on his feet again, the punches from Corporal Park were strangely painless. This realization terrified Park to the core, and he trembled on the floor, his confidence shattered. Now, it was Byong's turn to make Park understand the fear he had inflicted. Back in the purgatory, Byong's punch landed on Wang Chiel's face, leaving everyone who witnessed it, including Wang Chiel himself, in shock. Wang Chiel's rage consumed him, and he tackled Byong, breaking the hand Byong had used to punch him. Yet, to everyone's astonishment, Byong returned the punch, even with his broken hand. Only Ho-jeong seemed to fully grasp what was happening, and she advised Wang Chiel to run. Ignoring her warning, Wang Chiel remained determined to fight and asked Ho-jeong for her theory on what was happening to Byong. She revealed that something similar had occurred in her former team, where a person had a similar instinct to Byong's. When they snapped, they lost all control and turned into monsters. Ho-jeong cautioned Wang Chiel to stop his actions, warning that further activation of Byong's power might lead to a cardiac arrest once the power wore off. Byong's bones were broken, his body had exceeded its limits, and he could only move because he was numb to pain. If this resulted in Byong's death, he would be sent to hell alongside the person who triggered him, Wang Chiel. Anshik attempted to reason with Byong, but he was beyond the point of rationality. Now, Wang Chiel was forced to flee for his life, as Byong identified him as his nemesis, Corporal Park. Yongpal returned from his mission and was informed of the dire situation. Wang Chiel was on the brink of death, and the possibility of him ending up in hell loomed large. After being kicked in the face by Byong, Wang Chiel crashed to the ground. Anshik urgently told Wang Chiel to stay down. He recounted his earlier encounter with Byong in his monstrous form, and how, after apologizing, Byong couldn't see him anymore. Anshik suggested that Wang Chiel should remain on his knees and offer a sincere apology. Before another surge of impact from Byong, Wang Chiel finally apologized, and Byong's powers gradually began to wear off. As Byong lay on the floor, coughing up blood and teetering on the brink of death, the gravity of the situation was palpable. Even Wang Chiel, who had personal experience with the horrors of hell, was terrified. He implored Ho-jeong to heal Byong, his aggressive demeanor giving way to a desperate plea. In this desperate moment, Ho-jeong struck a surprising deal with the aggressive Wang Chiel, teaching him some manners and politeness in the process. Wang Chiel, for the first time, used her name and knelt to the floor, pleading for her help. 30 minutes later, everyone sat in groups, emotionally drained from their harrowing experience in purgatory. Wang Chiel expressed relief at the situation, but Yongpal was furious that his boss had kneeled before the kids. Wang Chiel, however, slapped some sense into him, reminding him of their dire circumstances. Meanwhile, Ho-jeong and Anshik had a conversation about his weaknesses. Ho-jeong's ability to handle the situation with Wang Chiel had left a strong impression on Anshik, and he expressed a desire to learn from her, despite her tendency to betray the group. Healed and recovered, Byong and Seorin discussed his near-death experience, even though Byong couldn't remember the details. Seorin felt disposable due to her perceived lack of abilities, but Byong reassured her, telling her that her strength would emerge at the right time. He also gave her his flashlight, the only possession he had left after his backpack was stolen at the beginning of their journey. The flashlight had given him courage, even when everything else was taken from him. The group continued their search for resentment backpacks and stumbled upon one with an emotional ending, promising a shorter time in purgatory. The two bullies were eager to take on the task for its benefits, but Anshik warned them that their approach might be ineffective. He doubted that the resentment target, a working-class woman, would listen to tattooed goons and believe they lacked emotional intelligence. Anshik proposed that the girls and Wang Chiel take on this backpack, while the rest split up to tackle another one that required violence. Anshik also revealed that his instincts were evolving. He could not only track the backpacks, but also identify the type of resentment task they contained. The first target, a 23-year-old woman named Soo-yeon, was introduced. Suffering from depression due to job difficulties and poverty, she had dropped out of university to work part-time jobs, but was burdened by unnecessary pressure from her family, including her mother, who had taken out a loan for her seemingly irresponsible son. The trio assigned to the task, Seorin, Ho-jeong, and Wang Chiel, analyzed the situation, considering possible solutions. Wang Chiel suggested robbing a gambling joint, but Ho-jeong promptly dismissed the idea, emphasizing that a lady wouldn't survive stealing from thugs. Wang Chiel eventually agreed, recognizing the potential consequences. He was sent on a walk, while the girls handled the rest of the task. Given that Soo-yeon wasn't related to the deceased person, they couldn't introduce themselves as ghosts. Instead, they planned to pose as guardian angels and ended up doing all the cafe's chores for Soo-yeon. hoping it would relieve some of her burden, but it only made her boss happy, not her. As Suyeon walked home that evening, a drunk man bumped into her and attempted to claim that he was in the right, despite being clearly at fault. However, their altercation took an unexpected turn when the drunken men suddenly noticed a bag swinging in thin air. Even in their intoxicated state, they perceived it as a threat, prompting them to apologize and quickly flee. Following their plan, Seorin and Hojeong introduced themselves to Suyeon as her guardian angels, as well as the individuals who had helped her with chores at the cafe. However, Suyeon was skeptical and refused to believe them unless they could make her truly happy by giving her a significant amount of money. Just then, Wangchil arrived as the third guardian. Although his approach was more sinister, he suggested heading to a gambling joint to spy on her opponent's cards, so he could inform her when to fold or draw. This intricate proposal, which revolved more around the art of deception than the blatant act of theft, had Suyeon encountering Wangchil. His appearance, exuding an aura of sheer terror, struck fear deep into her heart, prompting her to flee in an overwhelming wave of dread. Simultaneously, another faction of the team, tasked with the more forceful aspects of their unique approach to resolving deep-seated resentments, was engaged in a particularly demanding mission. This involved a young boy, a victim of relentless bullying due to his physical appearance. Their mission's gruesome requirement was the extraction of each target's teeth, a task unsettlingly well-suited for Yongpal. As he diligently performed this horrifying task, his associates, Anshik and Bayong, were actively rounding up the next group of students. These unsuspecting individuals were about to experience the full extent of Yongpal's terrifying method. Amidst this unsettling scenario, Yongpal found himself increasingly disturbed, not by the task at hand, but by Anshik's demeaning manner of speech. He perceived these directives as belittling, coming from someone he viewed as nothing more than a child. In response to Yongpal's growing irritation, Anshik retorted with a venomous tone. He implied that if Yongpal was so discontented, he should have taken up the issue with their boss rather than projecting his frustrations onto an innocent child. The undercurrents of their plan, designed to create a rift between the boss and his subordinate, seemed to be bearing fruit. Concurrently, back with the segment of the team focused on crafting a more positive conclusion, they faced ongoing hurdles. Suyeon's reaction to Wang Cheol, who she perceived as a figure of horror, led to a chaotic chase. The other girls pursued her relentlessly, but Suyeon was adamant in her desire for solitude, rejecting the presence of those she mockingly termed her guardian angels. Hojong, in an attempt to defuse the situation, concocted a creative but dubious explanation. She labeled Wang Cheol as a malevolent spirit, distinct from their group. However, Suyeon's response was marked by a profound sense of apathy. She expressed her longing for true happiness, a state she claimed to achieve only in the solitude of sleep. Her demand was clear, for these self-proclaimed guardian angels to leave her in peace. In a twist of events, Hojeong formulated an ingenious strategy. She planned to gain access to Suyeon's residence under the pretense of performing household chores. Yet, her true intentions lay elsewhere. When Suyeon succumbed to sleep, Hojeong was set to implement her hidden agenda, a plan shrouded in mystery and anticipation. The following morning, Suyeon experienced the most startling awakening of her life. She found herself in a state of disbelief as she realized that she had slept until the late hour of 1 p.m., a stark contrast to her initial intention of rising at the early time of 5 a.m. This unexpected turn of events left her utterly bewildered. The mystery behind Suyeon's unusually prolonged slumber was soon unraveled. The person responsible was none other than Hojong. She had interpreted Suyeon's casually expressed wish for additional sleep in a literal sense. Hojong, in her role as a guardian angel, had earnestly believed that fulfilling this desire would contribute to Suyeon's happiness. When Suyeon eventually managed to access her phone, she promptly made a call to her employer. The ensuing conversation was succinct yet distinctly harsh. This unfortunate interaction led to the loss of not only her current job, but also her secondary position at the Saturday office. This sequence of events plunged Suyeon into a profound state of anger, driven by her fury. Suyeon impulsively grabbed Hojeong by the hair. However, Hojong appeared to derive a perverse pleasure from this, aggravating Suyeon even further by complimenting her on the health and condition of her skin, which had seemingly benefited from the extended rest. In an attempt to justify her actions, Hojeong meticulously explained the adverse effects of sleep deprivation on the human body. Yet, Suyeon countered this explanation with a revelation of her own. She disclosed that her ability to enjoy restful sleep had been severely compromised ever since her brother had recklessly squandered their family's finances through online gambling and speculative investments in cryptocurrency. She lamented how, unlike her university colleagues who had successfully graduated and secured respectable employment, She was trapped in a cycle of part-time work, struggling to make ends meet. Overwhelmed by her situation, she broke down, shedding tears of despair and frustration as she shared the extent of her struggles with the girls. In another realm, the team responsible for handling tasks related to violent resentment had completed their assigned mission. They were now in purgatory, awaiting the arrival of their colleagues. Amidst this wait, Anshik's curiosity was piqued. He inquired about the circumstances surrounding the deaths of Youngpal and his boss. Much to everyone's surprise, Youngpal chose this moment to divulge details about his past life with Wang Cheol. He revealed that in their previous existence, both he and Wang Cheol had been involved in nefarious activities. They believed that the only way to atone for their multitude of sins was through the sacrifice of their own lives. Wang Cheol expressed regret for having drawn Youngpal into a life of crime. However, despite Youngpal's aspiration to settle down and start a family, he held no resentment towards Wang Cheol, the man who had once saved his life. To reconcile their past and seek redemption, they had made the drastic decision to end their lives by intentionally driving off a cliff. Now, as participants in the Survive to Revive program, they were given a chance to rectify their past mistakes, having seen glimpses of promising futures in their previous lives. However, Anshik pondered over a perplexing thought. What would become of the future Youngpal had envisioned if Wang Cheol were to perish before him? This question underscored the intricate complexities and intertwined fates within their current predicament. As they progressed in their ongoing dialogue with Su Yeon, she evolved into an extraordinarily loquacious individual, engaging in non-stop conversation for a marathon duration of 6 uninterrupted hours. Even her celestial guardians assigned to watch over her found themselves utterly inundated by her relentless stream of words. More touching, however, was the undeniable aura of genuine enthusiasm that enveloped her, as she eagerly shared an array of thoughts and diverse experiences. During this extensive interaction, a delivery of succulent chicken arrived, a culinary delight that Su Yeon was keen to share with her ethereal companions. Alas, the stringent regulations of purgatory strictly forbade them from partaking in earthly sustenance, casting a shadow of disappointment over Hojong and Seorin. They could only observe, a blend of helplessness and envy in their gaze, as Suyeon indulged in the delectable poultry dish solo. Amidst her meal, she confided that this liberating day of openness and respite had significantly uplifted her spirits. She also extended heartfelt appreciation towards her guardians, crediting them for reigniting a sense of joy within her after enduring an extended period devoid of such emotions. In an unexpected turn of events, a wormhole materialized, heralding the successful completion of their task. Consequently, the backpack's seal was undone, and each participant received their due reward for adeptly resolving a task steeped in deep emotional resentment. Meanwhile, in the ethereal realm of purgatory, Wang Cheol deemed it appropriate to take a period of rest, designating Seorin as the vigilant sentinel, while the rest retreated into slumber. Just as Seorin appeared poised to voice her own weariness from the recent undertaking, Wang Cheol bluntly criticized her for her perceived inadequacies, stating that her liabilities to the team were abundant and that she should harbor gratitude for not being excluded. This harsh critique deeply wounded Seorin, robbing her of any chance of restful sleep that night. Eventually, Youngpal joined her, and during their heartfelt exchange, an astonishing event unfolded. Seorin remembered the flashlight previously given to her by Baiyong. To their amazement, the flashlight began to reveal visions of the future, a future that Seorin could view at will. She witnessed not only her own destiny, but also glimpsed into the futures of Baiyong and Youngpal, notably a version without Wang Cheol, where Youngpal enjoyed the warmth of a loving family. Anshik, who had clandestinely eavesdropped on their entire dialogue, quickly recognized the monumental implications of this discovery. The following daybreak, Youngpal covertly approached Anshik, revealing his awareness of Anshik's discreet manipulative tactics. Anshik, in turn, disclosed his calculated plan to tactically eliminate Wang Cheol from their team. Youngpal, intrigued and aligned with this strategy, expressed his eagerness to play an active role in this unfolding scheme. As they continued their journey, Anshik found a new backpack along the way. When they arrived at its location, they witnessed a starved participant being condemned to hell. This sight excited Wang Cheol, who warned everyone to be prepared so they wouldn't end up starving like the unfortunate individual they had just seen. He also ordered Youngpal to check the resentment task, which turned out to be Wang Cheol's favorite type. The task that Wang Cheol and Baiyong encountered was one that offered a reduced number of days in purgatory, focusing on deep or emotional resentment. However, it required the participation of 2 people, making it a challenging endeavor. Wang Cheol initially saw it as a difficult task given his history, and Yongpal also rejected the task. Consequently, Wang Chil decided to take on the task with Bai Yong. Wang Chil ordered the rest of the team to split up and search for other resentment backpacks, just as they had done before. However, as Wang Chil and Bai Yong were about to jump into the backpack together, a betrayal occurred. The team decided to betray Wang Chil and sent him into the resentment backpack alone, hoping that he would starve there after being unable to complete the task. Back in Purgatory, the team celebrated the elimination of the harsh boss who had dictated their lives. To ensure that no one else entered the backpack to complete the task, and as a tribute to his boss, Yongpal stayed behind until Wang Chil's demise. Yongpal's unique survival instinct allowed him to locate anyone in Purgatory that he had seen at least once, and Ho Jiong chose to stay with him. Meanwhile, the rest of the group continued their search for resentment backpacks. Suddenly, they stumbled upon an abnormal backpack they had never encountered or seen before. Anyone who viewed its content or accepted the task lost their life within it. Consequently, the reward for completing the backpack was adjusted to match its extreme difficulty, offering a reduction of 10 days in Purgatory. Anshik, with a fervent sense of determination, passionately urged his team to embrace the daunting challenge that lay before them. After delivering an inspiring series of pep talks, which resonated deeply with each member, the group collectively agreed to undertake the task. This particular mission was steeped in the quest for revenge, and Anshik found himself directly communicating with the victim, Seokyeon. Seokyeon, in a heartfelt and detailed manner, presented Anshik with a thorough recap of the events that had unfolded in his life. Seokyeon's life story was a tragic tale of being egregiously mistreated and cunningly manipulated by Hyungmi, the woman he once dearly loved. Driven by her false promises of lucrative profits, Seokyeon had invested a staggering sum of over 300 million in a business venture. However, this investment soon turned out to be a mirage, as Seokyeon's money vanished into thin air, yet he found himself continuously funneling more funds to her upon her relentless requests. Youngmi's true nature was not just that of a relentless gold digger. It was further compounded by the revelation that she was deceitfully involved with another accomplice, betraying Seokyeon. The narrative of Seokyeon's life was marked by his tragic gullibility and failure to recognize the betrayal at the hands of these cunning swindlers. He was left bereft of everything he owned, falling prey to their unscrupulous schemes. Now, burning with a desire for retribution, Seokyeon's task was focused on exacting revenge. He harbored a deep wish to see the swindlers' dreams shattered, to hear their cries of despair echo in the face of their doom, and to ensure they endured the same excruciating torment that he had suffered. Anshik, appointed to carry out this daunting mission, found himself against the clock, with a mere 10-second countdown ticking away before his imminent teleportation to the living realm. In those critical moments, Anshik swiftly relayed strategic instructions to his comrades, Byong and Seorin. He advised them to delay their entrance into the living realm by an hour, a calculated move aimed at maximizing the chances of their mission's success. Meanwhile, in a twist of fate, Hyungmi, ever the opportunist, had already set her sights on her next unsuspecting victim. She spotted a man distinctively dressed in a crisp white shirt paired with a blue tie, who was seated alone at the bar. He appeared lost in thought, nursing a beer, and seemingly engrossed in reflecting upon the intricacies of his own life. Before we continue, let's take a moment to shout out Diapered in 6046, who commented, "John Wick had a rival of a ex-soldier who killed group of northern soldiers with chopsticks. Badass," on our merciless video. Thanks for commenting. Outside the bar, Hyungmi's boyfriend, deeply engrossed in the fluctuating lines of his cryptocurrency chart, waited with a mixture of anxiety and hope. The digital numbers flickered, reflecting the volatile nature of his investments. When Hyungmi emerged to confront her boyfriend, her irritation was palpable. She felt exasperated that he had introduced her to someone she deemed a monotonous mark for their swindling scheme. However, her boyfriend, with a tone of earnest persuasion, emphasized the hidden wealth of the seemingly uninteresting man. He detailed the meticulous efforts he had undertaken to identify such a potentially profitable target. He implored her to maintain her charming facade, stressing the importance of their act in securing the lavish lifestyle that the swindled money would afford them. Curious and somewhat reassured, Hyungmi inquired about the status of their financial machinations. She requested to see the balance of their joint bank account, a digital vault of their ill-gotten gains. Her boyfriend, with a practiced motion, keyed in the first 2 digits of their secure PIN. Hyungmi completed the sequence with the final 4 digits, a ritual they had performed countless times. The screen lit up, revealing their balance, an astonishing 320 million won, an amount translating to roughly 240,000 USD. A sense of satisfaction washed over Hyungmi as she reflected on their accumulated wealth. Resolving to deepen their deception, she mentally prepared to further exploit the wealth of the unassuming investment banker, whom she had initially dismissed as dull. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to the conniving couple, Anshik, a bystander with an unusual gift, had overheard their entire conversation. He was soon joined by Baeyong and Seorin, who were eager to discuss the unfolding events. Anshik, with a detailed recall, narrated the happenings of the earlier encounter at the bar. He described how Hyungmi had skillfully flirted with the unassuming banker, all the while unaware of the true nature of her intentions. The narrative took a turn when Anshik recounted the banker's phone call to a friend, boasting about his new romantic prospect. In a twist of fate, the banker had inadvertently spotted Anshik. Surprised by his ability to see Anshik, who was from the afterlife, the banker was soon embroiled in a misunderstanding, leading to Anshik's mistaken ejection from the bar. The bartender, puzzled, saw no reason for the ejection as he perceived no child in the vicinity. This bizarre encounter led to the banker learning of Anshik's otherworldly origins and receiving a forewarning about Hyungmi's deceptive allure, a caution that could potentially save his significant savings from being swindled. In a nearby fast food restaurant, Hyungmi's boyfriend sat, his attention divided between a fizzy drink and his cryptocurrency chart. The bear market had not been kind to him, with a significant portion of his investments evaporating. Overhearing a conversation at an adjacent table, he caught snippets of Seorin discussing promising cryptocurrency ventures, hinting at insider knowledge from her uncle. Just as she was about to divulge the name of a potentially lucrative coin, she abruptly stopped, leaving Hyungmi's boyfriend hanging in suspense. Back at the bar, the investment banker was deep in a business call, his conversation peppered with mentions of promising stocks. Hyungmi, always vigilant for an opportunity, attempted to eavesdrop, hoping to glean information on profitable investments. Unbeknownst to her, an hour earlier, Anshik and the investment banker had conspired in the restroom, devising a plan to mislead Hyungmi and her boyfriend, setting the stage for their eventual financial ruin. What will happen next? Find out next time by staying tuned for our future recaps. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more great recaps.